On December 5, 1872, another ship found the Mary Celeste drifting alone in the Atlantic. She was seaworthy, her cargo was intact, food and water were still aboard. All 10 people who'd sailed on her were simply gone. Some stories were never meant to be found. On November 7, 1872, the Mary Celeste sailed out of New York Harbor bound for Genoa, Italy, under Captain Benjamin Briggs, an experienced and well-regarded sailor who had never lost a ship in his entire career at sea. Aboard with him were his wife Sarah, their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and 7 crew members, 10 people in total, all considered capable and experienced, none of whom would ever be seen again. Below deck sat her cargo, 1701 barrels of industrial alcohol, bound for fortifying wine production in Italy, flammable, genuinely valuable, and found entirely undisturbed when the ship was finally located. The captain's log recorded a final entry on November 25th, placing the ship near the Azores, sailing normally, with nothing unusual noted in Briggs's own handwriting. After that entry, nothing. The ship continued on, completely unmanned, drifting roughly along her intended course for well over a week, with no one at all left at the wheel to guide her. On December 4th, the crew of another ship, the Dei Gratia, spotted her from a distance, her sails slightly damaged, moving erratically through choppy Atlantic waters near the Azores. Captain Morehouse sent 2 of his own men aboard to investigate the strange, silent vessel. What they found was a ship that was completely deserted, yet clearly not in any immediate danger of sinking. There was over 3 feet of water sitting in the hold, and one of the ship's 2 pumps had been disassembled, as if someone aboard had been checking urgently for a leak before things went wrong. The ship's only lifeboat was gone, normally stowed over the main hatch. Her navigational instruments and the ship's official papers were missing too, along with the charts, which had been tossed carelessly about the cabin. And yet the crew's personal belongings remained completely untouched in their quarters. Food and fresh drinking water still sat below deck, unused, along with valuables no thief would have left behind. Nothing at all suggested a struggle, a fire, or an attack of any kind. Whatever happened aboard the Mary Celeste, it happened fast enough to take all 10 people, and calm enough to leave almost everything else exactly as it was. Popular legend has long claimed that searchers found a half-eaten breakfast still sitting on the table, and a cup of tea still warm, small, eerie details that make the whole story feel almost supernatural. Those specific details were never in any official report filed at the time. They were invented over a decade later, in 1884, in a fictional short story published anonymously by a young, then unknown writer named Arthur Conan Doyle, and the fiction got mistaken for documented fact ever since. What official investigators in Gibraltar actually established was far more restrained. They explicitly ruled out piracy, mutiny, and violence of any kind aboard the ship, but their final report offered no alternative explanation for where the 10 people had actually gone. The leading modern theory, favored by several maritime researchers who have studied the case in depth, holds that the crew, fearing an alcohol vapor explosion below deck, or wrongly believing the ship was taking on water faster than it actually was, abandoned her in the lifeboat, planning to reboard once things settled, tied to the ship by a line that may have simply snapped in rough seas. That theory accounts for a great deal. The disassembled pump suggests a genuine, urgent check for flooding, and the missing lifeboat matches a deliberate, if panicked, evacuation. It doesn't fully explain why an experienced captain like Briggs, who had never lost a ship before, would abandon a vessel that was demonstrably still floating for an open rowboat in the middle of the Atlantic. And it doesn't explain why no trace of that lifeboat, or of the 10 people who were supposedly in it, was ever found, not then, and not in the century and a half since. Some stories were never meant to be found. This one left a well-built ship in near-perfect condition, still floating and still sound, and not a single physical trace of the people who should have still been standing on its deck. Tell me in the comments, a panicked, fatal mistake in a lifeboat, or something that convinced 10 experienced people to abandon a perfectly good ship in open ocean. Subscribe to the Unburied. The Ocean Files continue from here.